I'm here today with Matt Roberts, who is the Global Consulting Lead for Workforce Transformation at Dell Technologies. Welcome, Matt.
Hey, Steve. Great to be here.
So, Matt, can you talk to me about the role of the CIO as you see it, and if that's changed in recent years?
I certainly think that it's been changing for a few years now. We used to have CTO keeping the lights on and the CIO focusing on innovation and engaging with the business and security and those things. Certainly what I've seen in the last few years is a bit more segmentation of these executive roles, whether it's installing a chief digital officer, a chief, a CISO on the security side, and even new roles like head of employee experience or chief experience officer to reflect the growing importance of improving experiences for the workforce. First of all, I would just say that as technology continues to be one of the differentiating factors for each company in terms of their market competitiveness and ability to make the numbers that they're trying to make every month, every quarter. Again, as technology becomes more and more important to the success of the company, it has really allowed for IT to again segment out some of these capabilities. I think in particular, these new experience-focused teams are absolutely critical because they really are the difference between IT just being looked at as a cost center versus perception of IT being that they are aligned with the business, that they have the same goals as the business, that they're trying to make improvements day by day, all under the guise of making sure that the company itself is successful and that people have the maximum productivity possible.
And in your experience, how is IT perceived by the business right now versus where maybe you think how it should be?
Many of our customers are not even measuring the success of IT in that way, Steve. So I certainly said they don't know. And I think that that's one of the fundamental problems is that too many IT organizations are being measured on cost alone or cost plus uptime, and not enough of them are being measured on experience metrics like satisfaction and sentiment scores, et cetera. So that's certainly one thing that I would say needs to change, and we're out there helping to try to change that. But I would say also that the perception of IT is, too slow, not responsive enough, not aligned to our needs. They're off doing technology upgrade projects that may or may not be what we would want them to do if we had a say as a business. We hear these things a lot. It's changing. As I said, as technology becomes more and more ingrained in the way the business itself operates as part of digital transformation, we start to see some of those old perceptions slip away and the business recognizing how important technology is to their success. But I still think we have a ways to go, and we're out there trying to help.
And on the flip side, how well do you think the IT departments understand the needs of the end users in the business?
Most of the time, what we see is when IT says that they're listening to the business, what they mean is when the business creates support tickets when things break, they are collecting feedback on whether or not that support incident was a successful transaction or not. And they are doing somewhat regular meetings with key business stakeholders and listening to those that scream the loudest. And that ultimately sort of controls what their priorities and their roadmap are going to be for that next period of time. I certainly am one of those people that thinks that those two approaches of listening to the people that scream the loudest and just measuring success by how fast and successfully you close support incidents when really that's a last resort from an end user's perspective. They try to fix things themselves, they try to work around it. Finally, they decide, okay, I need IT's help. I'm going to go and figure out how to create a support ticket so I can get somebody to help me. I think those are ways of the past, and that there are more modern ways for IT to be listening and paying attention and using things like digital telemetry to help inform them and become more proactive. But we can talk about that.
Just building on that point, From what you've seen, what are the best run IT departments doing, or what are the best practices you've seen around understanding and responding to end user needs?
The most mature companies that we've seen have, as I said earlier, they've installed an actual team, first of all, an experience-focused team, typically led by some sort of executive role, whether it's a executive VP or even, as I said earlier, a chief experience officer. But more importantly, they're incorporating some key techniques and making it essentially a shared service within IT. And they are becoming the voice of the workforce or voice of the employee to provide feedback to every IT service owner, as well as each of the business stakeholders that IT liaisons with. To make sure, again, that everyone's listening, that they got the priorities right, that they're focusing on what matters to the common employee out there in terms of getting their job done and focusing on the business at hand. In particular, we like to talk about the idea of an experience-centric operating model for IT, where that experienced team in our most mature customers is really looking at three different vectors. They're looking at experience measurement in a variety of ways. We can talk about that. They are doing persona research in a dynamic, data-driven way to really understand not just the experience for employees overall, but also to really hone in on what's working in a specific geography or what's working for a specific role or job family, and even micro combinations of that. What those combinations in the office versus on the road versus working from home. And then finally, a function that we call adoption and change management, which aims to improve the digital dexterity of the workforce. Essentially, it's IT can roll out all these great technologies to their users, but if the users don't know how to use it, what's the point? So, adoption and change management helps bridge that gap and make sure that the workforce really understands how to use these things, and is giving feedback to IT again on what to improve to make it even better.
How do you think experience measurement underpins or supports this adoption and change management? Because clearly, if you're rolling out this technology and nobody's using it, you're not getting value.
Experience measurement is probably the most critical piece of what I talked about there in that experience-centric operating model. And we think, fundamentally, there are 3 or 4 different types of measurements that customers should be doing. Again, if you think about our most mature customers, they are putting telemetry on their endpoints and on their network to really understand what's going on in the environment. And again, trying to be more proactive in fixing things before they become problems. The second thing is sentiment and having some empathy towards users, but at a granular level from an IT perspective. So a lot of times we see customers investing in overall corporate employee net promoter scores, which is great. Don't get me wrong, that's a completely worthwhile thing to be doing. But typically that's not enough for IT to take action on. Usually in those net promoter score surveys, it's more about, do I have the tools to get my job done? It's one question. Whereas if you can, collect sentiment and get the pulse of your employees in a more granular way, you have much more rich data to go after, and it provides a lot more context behind, the prioritization and essentially the data that you see from the telemetry I mentioned. The third one is, most of our customers are adopting some combination of modern SaaS-based productivity platforms. All of these things have usage stats and analytics and behavioral reports and dashboards that really aim to show you whether people are working in modern ways or not. Are they still sending email attachments all the time, or are they actually using co-authoring and sharing features in these cloud tools? So that's a third category that we spend a good amount of time on to make sure, again, IT is not just rolling out technology, but is actually changing behaviors. And then the last one is on the support tickets. If you're going to focus on it, don't just focus on closing them and making sure people are happy with the resolution. Mine that data so that you can use it more proactively to help avoid those tickets in the first place, right? So it's sort of a different flip on the role of that data. Again, really helped by having a sustained, focused, shared service team focused on employee experience within IT.
And just bringing back a little bit, you mentioned the word empathy. Where does empathy play a role in all of this?
I think this is so critical, not just from a society standpoint, but from the success of IT. The perception of IT is such an important thing. Again, in terms of winning the hearts and minds of the workforce and showing that IT is trying, showing that IT is willing to do things differently, and that IT is willing to change its priorities based upon what it's hearing. And again, using almost marketing techniques as part of their overall adoption and change management function to again over communicate with multiple different channels what IT is trying to do and why. Those things go such a long way towards employees being more willing to deal with problems, being more patient when things go wrong, being more willing to try to fix them themselves as opposed to going immediately into screaming to the help desk. And you can do research to fundamentally see that change and the impact, all by starting with a simple thing: listening. Gather the voice of the employee, be empathetic to their needs, to their situation, the context of why they're giving you the feedback. Use your other data sources, as I said, telemetry tools, et cetera, to help round out the story so that you get the full context of the feedback. But I can't stress enough that empathy is definitely the new tool in the toolbox for IT, and not enough of our customers are employing it successfully.
Just to bring that together, is empathy the future in your opinion?
I'm hoping it's the present. It certainly has not been much of the past. It's definitely the present, and I would be upset if it's not a big part of the future. But I do think, again, as technology becomes more and more ingrained in the success of every company out there, once IT organizations start to see this, they just have to do it once. Start to see the value of more structured, formal listening, and do it in a scientific way that you can start to take trends and prioritization on later. They'll never stop. Once they start listening and they see the value in it, they'll never stop. One thing that I'll mention, Steve, is just as a simple example. Every one of our customers for forever has been doing things that they call proof of concepts or proof of values or pilots, or evaluating whether a technology solution is a good solution or not in their environment. The success criteria for those POCs, pilots, et cetera, has always been focused on, did the feature and function work as we expected it to? Essentially, did that technology's marketing lie to us or not? But what we're advocating for is another layer of success criteria, which is, did it improve the experience of the users who were in that trial or that proof of concept? And by listening through empathy and some of the techniques we've been talking about today, and measuring before and after, you can now start to forecast not just whether or not that technology rollout is going to be worth doing or not from a technical or financial standpoint. You'll also be able to forecast the sentiment improvement scores for your organization by rolling out that solution. So whether it's something as simple as self-service password reset or Windows Hello to improve boot and log-on times, if you measure the before and after of that, you'll be able to forecast out how much better your overall experience is going to be from an IT perspective.
As much as empathy is parts of the present, parts of the future, it almost sounds like you can use empathy to predict the future.